Shalom to everyone. My name is BG. My website is glithehiddenTruth.william.com, and my YouTube channel is Repairers of the Breach. And what I'm about to present to you is a thing that I did in my college course called a didactic, and I did it on the psychological effects of slavery on the so-called African American, which I believe are the descendants of the ancient Hebrews. Now, this is a topic that's taboo and that people barely talk about. They try to stay away from it, but it's something that needs to be addressed, because as a people, black people are messed up in the minds, messed up all over the place, and the reason why is because of slavery and because we have a lack of knowledge of who we are, where we came from. Our true history and culture and heritage has been hidden from us, and it's important that we understand who we are. We understand the effects that slavery have on us even till this day. So please enjoy, all right? And I ask you to please give me any input on this presentation. Please like, all right? Please comment, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please visit my webpage. All right, enjoy. The objectives to this presentation is to understand the adverse effects of slavery on the so-called African Americans, to comprehend the psychological techniques used on a slave, and realizing the internalized oppression of the African American today due to the adverse effects of slavery. All right, let me go over a little brief history of the transatlantic slave trade before I get into the meat of this presentation. Now, the transatlantic slave trade started around the year 1450 AD. Then around 1619 is when the Americas, North and South America, and Central America, and the Caribbeans joined the transatlantic slave trade. For the simple reason they needed a workforce to cultivate their land and bring them profits and everything. But during that time, over 100 million slaves lost their lives, their heritage, their culture, all right? Many lost their lives on the way to the ship. Many lost their lives on the way over to the so-called new land. And many lost their lives when they got to this new land. This is that is a real genocide. Over 100 million deaths of slaves, of so-called African Americans, which I believe to be the descendants of the ancient Hebrews. All right, what you're seeing right here, this is a map of Africa showing the different regions that the slaves was taken from. Now, this might be a little blurry, but I'm going to go ahead and read off these different regions. The region up there in the red is Senegambia, all right, and then the next one in the yellow is Upper Guinea. The next one in the green is Windward Coast. The next one is Sky Blue, which is the Gold Coast. The Bight of Benin is blue, all right. Then the violet is the Bight of Biafra. The purple is West Central Africa. And the pink or magenta is Southeast. And these are the lands, these are the areas that the slaves was taken from and brought over to the Western world. All right, this is the map of the slave trade destinations. All right. Now, if you see, starting at the bottom, 38% of the slaves went to Brazil, all right, and then next up, 40% went into the Caribbean, but within that, 17% of the French took them, 17% of the British took them, and 6% of the Dutch, Danish, and whoever else took them. Spanish America took 17%, and the United States took 6%. Now, as you can see, is that the United States took the least amount of slaves, but I believe that they treated them the worst out of all of them. So if all us black people out there, we most likely got relatives in South America, Central America, the Caribbean, and all over. Um, this is what it is, and all these countries use us to build them up. Now, during the slave trade, the slaves, they were traded for copper, cloth, trinkets, slave beads, guns, and ammunition. Also rum and other things of the such. This era of the transatlantic slave trade was the most horrific and frightening for the so-called African American slaves, which I call Hebrews. All right, and the reason why is because they were kidnapped from their tribes and taken from their homeland and sold into slavery for raw materials. All right, this is the map of the route that they took, starting from the bottom. You got the slaves to America, and then from there you got sugar going to New England, and from America to Africa you got rum to Africa. All right, so that's basically was the way they sailed their boats in this whole transatlantic slave trade. Now, one of the adverse effects of slavery was that the slaves developed a subconscious inferiority complex, which you can see in today's African American youth and grown adults. The reason why this happened, the reason why they developed this complex is because they was forced from their source of self-concept and identity, and they was discriminated against that. All right, which mean that they don't know who they are, they don't know where they came from, they don't have no culture, no identity, or any of that. All right. Then the history and accomplishments were replaced by a repetitive doctrine of black inferiority, which basically saying that we're the lower class human beings, and it was repeatedly told to us. And also it was followed with harsh treatment and brutish reprisal. That's how they did, to keep people in fear and keep them subservient. All right. Next, slaves were stripped of their pride and their self-respect. All right, women was taken from their husbands to be raped at the owner's discretion, and also they was forced to work without pay, which caused self-loathing and depression. Imagine being stripped away from your family and imagine being a man and your wife is being stripped away from you and your kids and being raped by the owners. Imagine that. Imagine how that make you feel. Do you feel prideful? Do you have self-respect for yourself? Would you have self-respect for yourself if you kept working without pay? You would be depressed and you would be self-loathing because you're working for nothing. That's how they did it. It was planned and it was calculated, and they knew what they were doing from the jump. All right, to strip us of our self-pride and self-respect, which you can see going on today. Another way that the pride and self-respect was stripped was through brainwashing. The slaves was always told they was less than human. They was the lesser race, and they said if you tell somebody something so many times, they would start to believe it. And so therefore they started to believe that they deserved the harsh treatment because they believed that they was lower on the food chain, or lower on the totem pole. All right, and also the human status was attacked, all right, by the tarring, feathering, castration, and removal of limbs. Men, how would you feel being castrated? How would you feel having your limbs removed? How would you feel if we repeatedly told you was nothing? All right, that would strip you of your self-pride. It would strip you of your self-respect. All right. And again, you see a lot of this today. A lot of us, so-called African Americans, have no self-pride and absolutely no self-respect. These are just some pictures depicting some of the conditions of slavery. The top picture is basically where the field slave lived at. You can see this young African American boy standing in his slum of a household. You can see self-loathing and depression, and you can see the black slave being pursued by his masters for an infraction. The slave masters also kept a hold on their slaves by using tools of division, causing animosity and strife amongst the ranks of the slaves. Now, the first tool of division I'm going to discuss is the battle royals and human cockfights. Now, I just recently saw this movie called The Django, and it depicted the human cockfight. All right, and what it is, they pit two slaves against each other, and they fight to the death. Then on top of that, they have the other slaves watching these other slaves kill each other to keep them in check. All right, and also they have battle royals. What battle royals are is when they had groups of slaves fight against each other, sometimes to the death, sometimes not. But it's caused division and strife, and the people that wins the most develop this cocky way about them. You understand what I'm saying? So that's a part of the tool of division that they did. Well, the next tool of division is called selective breeding or copulation. Now, what selective breeding is, as you can see on here, it says breeding or crossing of organisms with favorable traits. All right. This allows the favorable, traits to remain in the population. All right. So what they did is they took certain slaves of a good stock, I guess, and they made them have sex with the slave females to produce a hard-working slave, I guess, or what not to say. And even if the slave was married, they still had to copulate with somebody else. So therefore, that also caused animosity against the weaker slave and the stronger slave that's getting basically getting all the sex and copulating. All right. So imagine being a weaker slave and your wife is being is having sex with a stronger slave than you. You know what I'm saying? Which takes away your self-worth and your self-respect, and you'll feel less than a man. And also the women's self-respect and their self-pride went down. Their self-concept was low. All right, they treated slaves like animals, like livestock. It was not right, you know. It destroyed the foundations of marriage, of the families, as you can see today. You know, it's single mother homes, moms are sleeping with everybody, dads sleeping with everybody, and it's just divides, and it's still hooked in us to this day. The last tool of division that I'm going to discuss is the house Negro versus the field Negro. Now, the house Negro was the slave that stayed in the house. It was a slave that probably they weren't basically light skinned, but they had less Negroid features. You understand what I'm saying? They had better clothes, they ate better, and they had more trust in the master. All right. And the field Negro was the Negro that had more of the Negroid features. Understand what I'm saying? And they felt subservient to the house Negro. You know what I'm saying? The field Negro was considered the lowest of the low races. You understand what I'm saying? So this right here caused major division, because you had the field Negro hated the house Negro, and the house Negro hated the field Negro, and it was field Negro, not the field Negro, but the house Negro telling on the field Negro, licking the master's wounds, taking the master's, having the master's back, and snitching on their fellow slaves. All right, and the house nigga also took part of whooping the field slave. You know, today we got a lot of house Negroes today, you know, that think they are better than the field Negro, or as some light-skinned or mixed guys might think they're better than the darker-skinned guys, and vice versa. It's a power struggle within the race, because it's division and it's animosity and it's strife, which was produced out of slavery. All right, at last, I'm going to discuss the lingering effects of slavery on the so-called African American of today. Now, first of all, there's a lot of black on black crime that goes on that really stems from slavery. You can put that on the battle royals, the cockfights, the selective breeding, the house Negro versus the field Negro. Um, Also, our family structure is destroyed. Slavery devastated our um, our idea of marriage, our idea of family, um, and also we have no sense of true culture, no sense of true history, no sense of true heritage, which means that our identity was stripped. All right, so that's why you have many of our African American youth reaching for everything, grabbing for every religion. All right, they even like they even took the prison culture and mixed it with a music genre, hip hop, and now they made it into a very destructive culture. You know, that's just from a lack of knowledge of who we are. And just like the Most High said, "My people die because of lack of knowledge." And as African Americans, I call ourselves Hebrews, we have no identity. But I'm here to tell you today that our identity is the descendants of the ancient Hebrews. You can look it up and you study it. All right. But slavery did a big number on us. All right. We need to realize who we are, come together as a people, and overcome the psychological effects of slavery. We need to hold people responsible, and we need to demand for the truth of our history, heritage. Thank you very much. This is the Gila Inc. presentation brought to you by the Repairs of the Breach.